Hey everyone, welcome back. Now for today's video, I want to talk about the vampires from the Vampire Diaries. Now, I actually thought I made a video about this topic long ago, until I checked through my videos and realized it wasn't there. So, let's do it today. Let's have a deep dive into the world of the Vampire Diaries, where we'll look at how vampires were created, their strengths, their weaknesses, the different kinds of vampires, and basically just how it all works. This is gonna be a pretty detailed video. I've got a lot to cover today, so let's start from the beginning and examine how the vampire species originated. Vampires have existed for over 1,000 years within the Vampire Diaries universe and have a really cool, well thought out origin story. It's probably my favourite origin story from all the vampire franchises out there because it's just so different from the others. It stands out for its sheer creativity. The inception of vampires begins with a group of individuals known as the Originals. Now you can probably guess where they've gotten that name from. The Originals are a family of 5 siblings known as the Michaelsons, and they lived as humans during the 10th century. Their mother Esther was a witch, and their father Michael was a Viking warrior. The husband and wife originally had 6 children, but their youngest son Henrik was killed by werewolves after he snuck out late at night to watch them change under the full moon. Michael was devastated over his son's death and swore he would never allow anything to harm his remaining children. He convinced his wife to perform a spell that would deliver immortality upon his children. The spell Esther used was a modified version of the immortality spell, first created by Ketsia, the most powerful witch of her time, but unbeknownst to Esther, it would inflict severe consequences upon her children. Niklaus, Elijah, Rebecca, Cole and Finn each consumed the doppelganger blood in laced wine after it was used to bind the spell. Michael then killed his children, piercing them through the heart. When they arose, he forced them to consume human blood in order to complete the ritual. The Michaelsons now viewed the world in an entirely different view. They had super strength, super speed, enhanced vision, rapid healing from wounds, and even mind control. They had just become the 5 most powerful beings on the planet, and it all came from the power Esther was able to channel. However, Esther's powers were connected to the witch spirits of the other side. It was where she drew her power from. The spirits frown upon anything to do with immortality, believing that cheating death is not something anyone should be able to do, as death is an important part of life. Therefore, the spirits punished Esther by enforcing a weakness for every strength the new immortals were bestowed with, using nature as a weapon against them. The sun, which was called upon by Esther to give her children new life, now burned them when it glazed upon their skin. The neighbours who once befriended them could now shun them from their home with a magical barrier just by uttering the words of a disinvite. The beautiful vervain flowers that grew at the base of the white oak tree burned them to touch, and when filtered through any liquid, could prevent mind compulsion when consumed. Speaking of the white oak tree, its wood was now fatal to the siblings and could kill them once pierced through the heart. Their final punishment was the consequence of using a blood ritual in order to harness their power. The Michaelsons immediately developed an insatiable lust for blood and needed to consume it in order to draw strength and sustenance. The spirits had cursed the Michaelsons for their violation of nature's laws and transformed them into the first vampires. Michael was also turned into an original vampire by Esther in order to guide his children and correctly aid them in completing their own transitions. All vampires currently in existence stem from one of the 5 Originals' lines. Their lives are also linked to the Originals that created them, meaning if the Original dies, then every single vampire they created will also die, and the vampires they created themselves will die, and so on and so on. It's all a chain. everything is linked together. We've seen the best example of this when Finn was killed in the 18th episode of the 3rd season of the Vampire Diaries. After he's staked by Matt with the white oak stake, Sage and Troy died shortly afterwards. It's also noteworthy to mention that there is a spell to unlink each original from the bloodline that they created. In order to create a vampire, a certain number of steps have to be taken in order to successfully complete the process. The individual in question must consume vampire blood, which remains in their system for 24 hours. They then have to die or be killed by any means necessary while the blood is still in their system. Their body reanimates itself and they awaken with an overwhelming lust to consume blood. Should they consume blood, the transition will be complete and they become a vampire. However, if they refuse the blood, they'll gradually become weaker until the body shuts down and they die, as they are basically only temporarily animated with enough strength to consume blood. Normally, the reanimation process lasts between 6 to 12 hours before the individual dies. As a new vampire, the person experiences heightened senses, emotions and abilities. This can be very overwhelming for the newborn and can cause them to lose control of themselves, as it's a massive struggle to merely gather their thoughts. Without the guidance of an experienced vampire to help them after their transition, many newborn vampires expose themselves rather quickly and are killed in the process, normally by local police, vampire hunters or those aware of vampires in the area. On top of everything I've just mentioned, it fails in comparison to the biggest challenge of all, bloodlust. Although vampires from different franchises struggle with bloodlust and composure, it's really played upon quite heavily in the Vampire Diaries, with even experienced vampires struggling with their desire to consume human blood. Stefan Salvatore was over 150 years old, and the mere sight of the smallest drop of blood almost forced him into an uncontrollable rage, resulting in him having to remove himself from the situation more than once. We also see what happens to him when he gives in to his urges, as he consumes blood bag after blood bag, with it still not being enough to satisfy him. Blood, especially human blood, does not only satisfy a vampire's thirst, but it also heightens their supernatural abilities, making them stronger, faster and able to heal much more quickly than they would after not eating for a significant period of time. Human blood is most compatible with a vampire's dietary needs, and because of this, the majority of vampires rely on it as their sole food source, although they can still survive on animal blood too, though it makes them weaker. Vampires are magically preserved in the physical state that they were in when they died, therefore making a vampire's body a freshly dead corpse, though it is reanimated and protected from decay with dark magic. Their true face is a slightly transformed version of their human face, which includes red, bloodshot sclera with protruding veins around the eyes, as well as elongated fangs. Vampires are also fertile and cannot produce children. Vampires will always struggle with their emotions and feelings, even the most experienced ones. These feelings always remain heightened and the vampires learn to control them over time. However, traumatic experiences can still greatly overwhelm a vampire, resulting in loss of control and loss of identity. To combat this, they have the ability to turn off their humanity in order to make it easier for them to emotionally deal with these challenges. Turning off one's humanity is described as flicking a switch, which essentially numbs their emotions and disables their ability to be empathetic, and allowing them to shut out painful feelings such as guilt, grief and sadness, and turning off the part of them that makes them ashamed of their actions. Vampires with their humanity turned off often think of themselves as purely rational and logical and are not ruled by their emotions. They also have no problem feeding indiscriminately on whomever they please, as they feel no guilt for their actions. However, the longer they leave their humanity off, the more extreme the return of emotions is, when they switch it back on, which is not done willingly. Vampires have greatly enhanced super strength and slowly grow stronger as they age, which means older vampires are normally a lot stronger than the younger ones. However, with that being said, emotion can give the younger vampire the edge, especially anger. We've seen this when Caroline was able to take Damon on, despite him being 150 years her senior, because her anger fueled her strength. It was the same case of when Elena overpowered Catherine due to the latter's involvement in her brother Jeremy's death. Vampires can smash through stone, wood, and most materials, even making large dents in metal. Even newly turned vampires can fully throw grown humans across the length of an entire room with great force. Vampires also have super speed. They can cover short distances in an instant and travel longer distances in mere minutes, appearing as if they're vibrating. They can also react quickly, jump very high, climb and run incredibly fast without difficulty or exhaustion. They're also able to heal rapidly from the majority of damage they sustain. They still feel the pain of these attacks, but just heal faster, which means the pain doesn't linger long as their body has already begun healing. They are immune to all illnesses, diseases, infections and viruses, never experiencing sickness from the moment they complete their transition. Vampires also have the very useful gift of mind compulsion. This allows them to influence and control thoughts, emotions and behavior, and can alter or erase memories. It's quite clear that vampires do have a lot of abilities and benefits that come with their immortal status, but they do, however, have several noticeable weaknesses. Although they can't be contained for long due to their strength and are difficult to defeat, breaking a vampire's neck will place them into a death-like status for several hours. It also depends on their age and how much blood they've consumed at the time as to how long or how short the recovery process is. They are also highly susceptible to sunlight, which causes their skin to burn before they burst into flames. However, just as their bodies are protected from decaying with age, the use of an enchanted daylight ring prevents the sun's rays from harming them, allowing them to walk in the sun. Vampires may be immortal in terms of not aging, but that does not mean they are incapable of sustaining life-ending damage. Decapitating a vampire kills them instantly, as does exposure to fire, although it takes slightly longer. Extracting a vampire's heart will also kill them immediately, causing them to permanently desiccate. Exposure to or ingestion of vervain causes a vampire to become severely feverish and weak, to the point that it can even hinder their healing abilities as well. Also, physical contact with vervain will burn a vampire's skin. Vampires cannot compel anyone who has ingested vervain or has it on their person. Vampires are also highly vulnerable to werewolf venom. It will cause them to hallucinate, grow severely weak, and go rabid until it kills them. Klaus or Hope's blood is the only surefire way to cure the bite. Guys, let's not stop here. Let's continue by analysing the different types of vampires from the Vampire Diaries. From my own research, I've counted 8 different kinds from across the series. Just click the card here to move on to the next part of the video.